Hello everyone, this is part 38 of What If Naruto Was Like Edward Elric in Fullmetal Alchemist, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Joshiro vs. Roshi. Joshiro had a plan. Against Roshi's overwhelming power that he had managed to cultivate through decades of training, it would take pretty much everything that Joshiro's Philosopher's Stone had to offer to match it directly. Good thing using too much of that power gave Roshi more or less battle tunnel vision, because that gave him the chance to finish the fight himself. His gauntlet-clad forearm was broken, but he didn't really need it for his plan. As the elderly Jinchuriki launched at him again, Joshiro whipped his necklace and pendant off and turned it into his large chain C weapon that he slung out at Roshi just for the old man to dodge. Joshiro stayed crouched low with his bad hand on the ground to brace himself as he swung the chain around, keeping the powered-up enemy at bay. Roshi roared in anger at how Joshiro was trying to keep him from tearing him apart and spat more globs of lava at him. Joshiro didn't bother trying to use his injured arm to form an ice transmutation, he simply dodged. He moved to another location and lashed out with his ranged weapon again, watching it see through the ground effortlessly like a buzzsaw through weak wood on its way to Roshi. "You stupid brat, you'll never touch me with that." Roshi snapped at Joshiro as he dodged the attack. Joshiro's chain was super fast with the Philosopher's Stone directly powering it. Any lesser shinobi with weak reflexes or lower levels of speed would have been in half by now, but Roshi had a demon powering him, and he was a spectacular shinobi regardless. As far as he could see, Joshiro was insulting him, thinking he could be touched by such a weapon. Joshiro once again moved when it looked like Roshi would rush at him. The red-haired man actually got past the white-haired Konoha alchemist's weaponry and barreled into him with his shoulder, knocking him away hard. Joshiro rolled and got back to his feet, stumbling and coughing up B from the blunt force he had just taken to his sternum. "For F's sake, I almost got my C caved in with that UF gorilla." He would have yelled that out loud if his lungs hadn't been screaming at him for being AF idiot for taking that hit. He could have dodged, but taking the hit was necessary. And when he looked and saw that the average-sized transmutation circle on the ground was still there, he knew his efforts weren't in vain. "Fine then, you brute. 2 more circles. 2 more and your A is S. You'd better pray to whatever god your elderly worships." Joshiro made 4 hand seals, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Joshiro pulled out one of the few ninjutsu he had managed to learn since becoming a shinobi for tactical purposes, courtesy of Naruto beating his signature technique into his head shortly after he himself had learned it. One clone appeared at his side and rushed at Roshi, prepared to give the man hell as the original Joshiro stayed back and launched his chained weapon at Roshi again. Roshi cackled until he saw the clone punch the ground with the arm intended for strong arm alchemy and freeze the resulting earthen spikes with the arm meant for freezing alchemy. Joshiro clone explained itself, "You don't think I'm a threat because I have half of my creator's chakra. The thing about that is, we don't use any F chakra. I can do this all day, you son of a b. Sneaky brat." Roshi yelled as he launched more lava from his mouth at the projectiles, melting them out of the air. "You'll have to do better than that, or you might as well start filling out the headstone of your grave right now. Of course, I could cremate you if you'd like." From the smoke generated by the impact of the 2 directly opposite temperatures, Joshiro's clone rocketed through with its fist drawn back as it its strong arm fist directly into Roshi's face, dispelling it from the intense heat generated by Roshi's chakra cloak. "Cremate that UF fossil." The give that he felt behind his fist in his clone's memory as he sent the Jinchuriki flying with that one single punch put the original in a good state of mind. When someone was hit with that hard right hand and the strong arm cestus around his fist to boot, they didn't really tend to get back up. But then again, when in doubt he would always ask the most important question he could: would Naruto get up from that? And after thinking on it, he came to a conclusion: oh, who am I kidding? Not only would the runt pop right back up, he'd spit his teeth at me, grin, and ask me if that was all I had while he called me AL. And in direct response, Roshi roared and stood back up as his chakra cloak blazed intensely. Joshiro narrowed his eyes at Roshi as he held up his freezing gauntlet. "It's over. Nothing you do is going to beat this move as long as you have no knowledge of alchemy. You're in the middle of my array. Joshiro placed his hand directly on the ground as a transmutation circle at his feet lit up. All around Roshi a multitude of separate circles also lit up and began generating large amounts of ice seemingly instantly that surrounded the old man and quickly moved in towards him. Ice. I'll just melt it all, boy. You can't K me like this. He generated lava and hit one of the walls, getting it to hiss and melt before more took its place immediately. What? My ice is already frozen to its absolute coldest levels by the Philosopher's Stone enhancing my power. Joshiro explained as he turned his freezing alchemy gauntlet and his strong arm alchemy cestus back into his 2 rings, and my array of circles won't quit producing ice until they all meet at the living conduit at the center, and that would be you, old man. Roshi desperately tried to melt all of the ice around him, but it kept creeping forward and even formed a ceiling above him. Now I'm going home. Enjoy being flash frozen head. And blame your village, and yourself. Roshi desperately tried to hold the ice off and found the sheer cold surrounding him was enough to break his concentration over his chakra as it faded, and that was his last defense against the ice that eventually encased his body, freezing him solid inside of a thick solid ice structure. Joshiro walked towards the ice structure and reformed his strong arm gauntlet, Hoso Kori, Diamond Dust. He then delivered a crushing haymaker to the structure that caused a thick resounding crack that shattered into countless chunks with Roshi inside. Small flurries of ice flew into the air and blew away. Letting out a sigh, Joshiro held his torso with one hand and began to limp off towards the rendezvous point. It's all up to you and the old man Hokage now, runt. Get out alive, damn it. XXX. With Blank stood up in the middle of a up landscape only to find the bee of the Iwa ninja he had been fighting littering the ground. A few of the bee and even some of the land itself let of random jolts of electricity due to the intensity of the last pair of attacks clashing. Blank tried to gather some electricity only to find it difficult as opposed to the effortless way he had been flinging his attacks around just moments prior. Well, I guess that means I got rid of the rest of my juice. I'm not exploding in a massive overload of my own power today, and that means I'm going home. He started walking in the direction that the rendezvous point would inevitably lie in as he steadily picked up more speed and eventually began to run, not willing to get bogged down and surrounded after all defeating all of the Iwa shinobi he had just managed to fight off. How the F am I going to ask Eiko to marry me without a F ring? He pondered to himself as he continued to leave the country as fast as his body would allow him to. He had made that promise to himself before he had even gone on this mission, and now it looked as if he was going to make it out alive. He was a man of his word, and he was going to ask his beloved sword-toting medic girlfriend of 3 years to marry him once he saw her again. Everyone else better get out of this safe. I don't feel like having to find new people to invite to the wedding. XXX. Hiruzen vs. Onoki. Sarutobi. Onoki shouted at the former Hokage he had firmly in his grasp as he and his enemy hurtled towards the ground at top speed. It ends tonight. You're not going to see the next sunrise, you old fool. If I won't, then neither will you. Hiruzen said as he strained against Onoki's grip on him. He was still stronger than his opponent, and the Tsuchikage just wasn't able to keep a grip on him. Hiruzen positioned his body so that Onoki fell slightly faster than he did, and as he found himself slightly above his opponent, Hiruzen grabbed a hold of Onoki from behind. Now either you write our descent or you're going to be my crash cushion when we hit the ground. Your choice. There was no way he was going to like that just because Hiruzen dictated it, but their relationship had always seemed to go that way. For as long as he could remember hearing of the man, Hiruzen Sarutobi dictated everything around him nearly flawlessly. Under him, Konoha emerged victorious from 2 separate wars and had taken its place as the most dominant village in the elemental nations, at the expense of Iwa's reputation and countless brave ninja that had been under Onoki's command. Onoki pulled up just before it would be too late to even out and save them both, and instead of crashing nosedive style into the ground, they slid along the surface until they hard into a prone building, turning the wall they into to rubble. The battlefield seemed settled as the sounds of the smoldering conflict of the entire night seemed to be the only sound available for listening. Eventually stones from the destroyed wall were flipped over and 2 figures began to move from the spot. Hiruzen and Onoki both dashed out from their places and darted over the battlefield as blurs before directly into each other and sending the other flying away, skipping across the ground like a stone on the surface of a lake where they both lay still for another moment. I'm too old for this, Hiruzen wheezed out as he crawled away from the sight of his landing spot. He turned to his side and saw Onoki doing the same as him, both moving at a reserved pace along the ground. Despite their best efforts to play it off with the intensity of their battle, both men weren't going to be able to take much more of this. Hiruzen would not have survived the encounter with Orochimaru all of those years ago had Guy and Kakashi not found a way to intervene and assist him by diverting some of the offense away from him. But he did survive that battle. He went in fully expecting to s. He had only done that one true time prior to Konoha's invasion, the day he was anointed the Nadaime Hokage's predecessor. And he realized that everything he did was to protect the future, Konoha's future, and the future of the boy that never had a true choice as to what he was meant to be, Naruto's future. He had that feeling again all the way towards Iwa before the operation even began, and now he was here. He was stuck directly in the center of the village. The only thing truly keeping the forces from swarming him was the fact that the Tsuchikage had notoriously destructive techniques and the two were fighting too close together for anyone to try any opportune attacks from a distance if they even could in the first place. Even if he managed to defeat Onoki, there was no way he was getting out of the village alive. This was his moment, just like his sensei Tobirama Senju before him. Attempting to hold off a force of shinobi he had no chance against all alone so that his underlings could escape. Onoki got up to his feet and glared over at Hiruzen, who did the same. You will not leave this village today, Sarutobi. This was your final mistake. Final. Yes, Hiruzen said, wiping some bee from his mouth. Mistake. No. I would do the same thing if I had another chance to. When it's time, my. No. Our time has passed. Onoki narrowed his eyes at Hiruzen as he saw his most prolific enemy forming hand seals, but with a smile of serenity on his face. You know that you cannot win this battle, don't you? He asked derisively. Hiruzen stopped his hand seals with a clap of his hands, holding them together, his smile never leaving his face. It was never about winning or losing, not this battle. I could never have seen myself just growing old and passing on. I always wanted to go out this way, I suppose. I was prepared to 3 years ago. He said as he could feel an ethereal presence standing behind him. Then I'll be happy to end your life for you. Onoki said as he rushed forward at Sarutobi with his flight technique, set on ending things once and for all with his next move, Doton, Kajuogen no Jutsu, Earth Release, Aggravated Rock Jutsu. He made and held the snake seal as for some reason Hiruzen did not move. That fool should know what this jutsu does even if he's never seen it, though it isn't one that anyone in Konoha knows. Hiruzen's expression never changed as Onoki grabbed a hold of him firmly and his body began to petrify from the feet upwards, slowly. Even as his body began turning to stone he spoke calmly, Shiki Fujin, demon consuming seal. What? Onoki said as he continued turning Hiruzen to stone. The only thing the man did in response was grab a hold of him as well. Before he could question what he just said or why he was allowing himself to be turned to stone, he felt a cold hand reach through his sea. He looked down and saw a ghostly hand inside of his body. What did you do? Look behind me. Hiruzen said in a calm voice. Look behind me and you can tell what I've done without me telling you. Onoki did as instructed and looked up behind his enemy to see the embodiment of the Shinigami hovering behind Hiruzen with his arm reaching through both of them. What have you done, you fool? Hiruzen chuckled as he could feel that the lower half of his body was now turned to stone. If you truly believe me to be your mortal enemy, then we now have an eternity to settle our differences inside of the Shinigami's belly. Today it ends with us, Onoki. Nothing is over. Onoki yelled back at him. This doesn't end with just you or I. You're just being an idealistic fool. Too late to worry about that now. Hiruzen said, allowing his eyes to close. I'll see you on the other side. With that, the ghostly hand of the Shinigami pulled both of their souls from their bee as Onoki's mouth flew wide open in a painless, breathless gasp. Hiruzen's body stopped petrifying by the time the jutsu reached his upper sea. Even if he hadn't managed to finish Onoki off, he would have in this village tonight. The panic created from this and all of the other things that had transpired would allow the others more than enough time to leave and reach the point where they were all meant to meet back up. I hope you all live longer lives than even this old man and live by your own ideals the way I've all hoped you would. Each person that came here for Naruto-kun definitely had the will of fire in him, he thought to himself as his eyes shut and the telltale sign of the Shiki Fujin appeared on his petrified stomach. Onoki slowly fell backwards to the ground with his eyes closed and Hiruzen's head simply drooped forward, most of his body stuck in place by being turned to stone. The eerie quiet of the still battlefield would have felt almost painful to the ears of any bystander that had borne witness to the conflict that had just taken place. Seeing the lifeless body of the Sandaime Tsuchikage laying on the ground would have shocked any of the current ninja of a Wagakure into a stupor, but seeing the partially petrified body of the Sandaime Hokage not too far from him with a serene smile on his face would have seemed completely surreal to any of them. XXX. Naruto vs. Han. Han clapped his hands together and started gathering chakra. I'll show you right now that without our demonic chakra we're no better than the foolish people that created us. I will not be satisfied until our powers tear these planes apart and force humans to shake in fear at our strength for an eternity. There was one problem with that, and Naruto just couldn't touch on it nearly enough for his tastes. He didn't have access to Kyuubi's chakra. All she could do was attempt to advise him when applicable, like now, Naruto-kun, he's gathering more power than he would need for any ninjutsu. He's going to start calling on his Bijuu's power, get away from him. Naruto didn't have to be told twice as he formed his cloud under his feet and flew back into the air just as Han's furnace exuded massive amounts of steam that encompassed his entire body in what appeared to be solid clouds that began taking a shape. Oh, I really don't like this Kyuubi-chan. The clouds took the form of a creature 3 times Naruto's size. A white-colored thing with an odd-shaped head, what appeared to be fur on its body that seemed to be horse-like in appearance, and legs that solidified that estimation of its form. Behind it whipped 5 long white tails as long as the rest of the creature's body. Yeah, I really don't like that. Not one bit. That was Han's transformed state, much like Gaara's partial transformation during the Chunin exams. It was like he was fighting Yugito in Kumo all over again, only this time it was for keeps. Wait, it was like fighting Yugito. He didn't use a hint of Kyuubi's chakra during that battle either, but then again Yugito hadn't been aiming to K him the way Han was here. Well, that seemed to be a waste at least, Naruto mused as he tried to think of a battle strategy. He doubted his arm blade would get enough penetration to see through to Han himself, even if getting close enough to try it was a good idea. He can't get up here to get me, all he can do is send more steam, right? Actually Naruto-kun, you might want to get moving because I remember. Kyuubi's advice was see off when Han in his dolphin horse form started running and jumped into the air, a few of his 5 tails whipping beneath him just so that they could form a trail of solid steam clouds to come at Naruto directly. Really? Naruto snapped indignantly as he started fleeing through the air as the massive beast started closing the distance. Does every Jinchuriki except for me have Kika superpowers that I can't do? I had to figure out how to fly by myself. He yelled to no one in particular as he turned his body around in the air and snapped his left hand's fingers to flicker off a torrent of flames directly at Han that hit him directly, him charging right into the wall of flames. Before he could even begin to speculate over the amount of damage he had managed to deal out with that move, Han flew right through it looking no worse for wear. Burns. You can't burn me in this form, Uzumaki. Even doing it in my normal form would have been impressive to say the least. He shot his remaining tails at Naruto to try and pick him out of the sky as the battle began turning into a rather one-sided dogfight. Fight me properly. Only the power of one monster can match another. Kyuubi-chan's not a monster. Naruto roared at him, turning around to try and give the persistent bastard what for. If you want to fight, then you've got me. He formed a blue orb of chakra in his right hand, intent on it right into Han, Rasengan, spiraling sphere. Naruto's attack wound up through the right side of Han's steam construct body, but when Naruto finished passing through it he could see that his entire right arm had turned red hot due to the heat of Han's steam. If that had been his real arm. Fool! Han yelled as one of his tails reached out and grabbed a close Naruto by his leg. He heard Naruto scream in pain at the intense temperature burning into his limb. He slung Naruto around by the leg before throwing him hard at the ground far below them. Naruto righted himself in midair to put his feet back beneath him and form a cloud to slow his fall and save his life, but a tail from Han into him from above and sent him the rest of the way to the ground. Naruto could feel his warm life be trickling down his face from a gash on his head due to hitting the rocky plains grounds. Shooting pains came through his nervous system stemming from his leg, and he could feel a sharp jabbing sensation in his ribs every time he tried to get back up. He really hadn't realized before just how much he relied on Kyuubi's ability to patch up any injury he had to get him through a battle. It had been invaluable in every single conflict he had where he had ended up taking damage. His spirit was willing, and with Kyuubi bolstering it, his body had been more than willing to follow him through hell and high water towards victory. But now he only had 2/3 of that equation. He wanted nothing more than to get up and break his foot off in Hansa somehow. His body was trying as hard as it could to keep up with that line of thinking, but without the healing his body was beginning to crap out on him. It had been a damn long night in the first place. He probably hadn't slept since he realized that Akiza had been taken, and he had been driving himself into the ground to prepare what he felt he needed to attempt getting her back. With Kyuubi all of this would have been no problem. Without Kyuubi his body was still well above average as far as a shinobi would go, but he was not a living energy conduit any longer until he could get Jiraiya's damned seal off of him, something he couldn't do himself due to his control being shot. And as Han landed on the ground and started stomping towards him, he knew that, due to his S-chakra control with the Gogyu Fuan on his body, he couldn't use its remedy, the Gogyu Kain, to take it off, and out of everyone there the only other person he knew that could have done it was Akiza, and she wasn't conscious. Even if she had been, she couldn't even move, let alone form any chakra to use a jutsu of any sort. So it was up to him. Either gut it out one time without Kyuubi there to patch up his boo-boos that he would get in pretty much every battle for fighting stupid, or he could keep laying there like a jabroni and get himself and Akiza K by this lunatic, without fanfare, miles away from home or anyone that would give a damn that they s there at hands, or in this case tails. Why do you continue to hold back? Han questioned as his forelegs walked him closer to Naruto, who saw him coming and tried to spring away from him, only to get S with another tail, sending him rolling across the ground. I will maim you until you choose to let the Kyuubi loose. Do you not care for your own health that much? He then noticed Naruto trying to push himself up with his auto-mail arm that stood there in place of an actual limb, evidently not, which begs the question, what actually would make you care that much, Uzumaki? Huh. What do I actually have to do to make you realize this is serious and that I want a war with a biju like myself? Why are you even doing this? Naruto growled out as he pulled himself into a position on one knee, his bare left arm with an angry-looking burn mark on it from the last attack. What's the point? Even if you Kami and Akiza-chan, nothing's going to change. They'll just treat you the exact same as always. Why fight for them? Because I choose to. Han said simply, I could just refuse and fight back and have them take the Gobi from me, and that would end my existence, but where is the fun in that? Where is the challenge, the purpose that all creatures crave? He said resolutely as if he truly believed himself right. Some wish to protect, others wish to dominate all, while some wish to be simply left alone. I simply wish for myself to know that I am the most powerful, period, bar none. And the Kyuubi in battle would be legendary. None would match it. And you will give me that victory, Uzumaki. He shouted as he swung a tail at Naruto, horizontally and low in an attempt to s Naruto aside again. Naruto jumped off of the ground from one knee just high enough to avoid the strike, but he could still feel just how hot the tail was when it passed by beneath him. Come on. Move faster. You can beat him. He yelled at himself, just get close one more good time and he won't know what hit him. Easier said than done, however, as his leg was still blown out from what Han had done to it while they were still in the air. He had to get creative with how he was going to move towards him large enemy, since with only one good leg the Skywalker seal would be all kinds of useless to him. His knee had been dislocated. All he needed was a moment's reprieve and he could reset it, though he'd been putting his own injuries in place for years. Naruto clapped his hands to begin a transmutation and placed them on the ground, causing a sudden protrusion from the rocky earth that shot him forward towards Han again. I'll just blow that stupid steam right off of you. He inhaled deeply, expanding his sea despite the pain it caused him to do so. Naruto then punched himself hard in the stomach. Futen, Renkuden, wind release, drilling air bullet. A shockwave from his mouth preceded him launching a ball of compressed air at him enemy that hit home directly. With the speed of the attack itself, coupled with the speed that Naruto had been hurtling through the air with, Han never had a prayer of dodging the jutsu in his large body, and wound up taking the hit right on the head, sending his horse body flying away harshly. Good shot, Naruto-kun. Kyuubi shouted excitedly. She knew that wouldn't finish anything, and so did Naruto, but it bought him the time he needed, and at best it would cripple Han's efforts later in the battle. Naruto fell along the ground as he had been thrown by his alchemic tactic to get close to Han quickly. He rolled to a sitting position and seethed in pain as he grabbed both sides of his injured knee. In an instant he twisted and jerked it back into place, letting out a pained shout for his own efforts. There, that should do for now. He stood back up and stomped the ground a few times to test the durability of his leg as he glared out where he saw Han land. That can't be all that you have, Han said as he rose from the ground, the steam reforming in the area of his head where Naruto's last jutsu nailed him. Naruto could see the clouds reforming over the red armor of Han, putting a gleam in his eye. Now he knew where Han's actual body was. He wasn't even close to being out of this fight yet. It seems as if you need some motivation to fight harder. Han then turned his head to the side where in the distance the speck that was Akiza's prone body lay. Don't you dare. Naruto grounded out threateningly, knowing exactly what the Jinchuriki was implying. This isn't about her. You said you didn't come here for her, this was just so you could fight me. Yes, I came to fight you. Han said with his tails whipping behind his body, but clearly you aren't prepared to give me the same courtesy. You aren't fighting me. You believe you can end this without the Kyuubi, either by me losing interest or with you escaping. There is no escape, and now if you don't fight me the right way I'll K her, and I'll make you watch. He shouted as his tails S into the ground cracking the rock with the force, Juten, Kankatsu's Jigoku Kara, steam release, Giza from hell. Naruto didn't even need to wonder what the jutsu Han just tried was meant to do. All he needed to know was that it was never meant for him, it was meant for Akiza. If the Gogyu Fuan was off of him then the fact that she was being targeted would probably have made him instantly tap into Kyuubi's chakra, but it was on him, and he couldn't let any demonic chakra out even if he really wanted to. Without a second thought, Naruto formed his clouds under his feet and rocketed towards Akiza, scooping her up just in time for the ground beneath her to begin cracking. Right as he grabbed her and flew away, the ground broke and a massive torrent of boiling hot water jettisoned up from under the ground. Naruto looked back at it and then at the girl in his arms and grit his teeth angrily. That son of a b. She never would have had a chance of surviving that if it had hit her. I'll K him myself. If he wants a monster I'll show him a monster, and no Kyuubi-chan ain't gonna see a hint of action for this party. As he expected, Han didn't take long to follow Naruto as they both headed through the skies once more. He opened his demonic figure mouth and fired off another attack from a distance, Juten, Akuma no Haru, steam release, Devil's Spring. From his mouth rocketed a powerful pump of scalding water that flew directly at Naruto and Akiza. He won't touch you. Naruto thought to himself about Akiza as he dodged the attack again and again as Han kept firing at him. The aerial attack shimmered dangerously in the light of the newly rising sun of the next morning. He can't stop me now. I won't let them have you, damn it. As he held her close to him he pulled out a prepared seal tag that he skillfully attached to a kunai as he felt Han getting closer and closer as he drew on more of the Gobi's chakra. Stop running from me, Uzumaki. Han shouted as he continued his chase, only a few feet behind Naruto, his mouth wide open for one attack as he fired off another torrent of his boiling water. He's too close, Naruto thought as he turned momentarily to throw his kunai coated in wind chakra right through Han's attack. He turned back around and used his body to shield Akiza's body from the water. The scalding hot attack forced his clouds to dissipate and burned the entire back of his body, forcing both him and Akiza to fall from the sky. The kunai actually hit the monster form of Han and sunk deep into its head, however it didn't stop his charge. It's over, Uzumaki. You were such a disappointment. He yelled as he flew towards the falling Naruto and Akiza. Naruto glared at him as he saw the Jinchuriki incoming and held up a slip of paper with a seal on it. A seal-less cage bunchen formed and jumped off of his body, taking the seal tag from his hand and S it onto Han's demonic body before it dispelled. Suck on a chakra-suppressing seal, you bite. Naruto grunted out as he made a half-ram seal. Before Han even knew what had hit him, the thick steam clouds forming his dolphin horse body fell apart and he lost his concentration over the Gobi's chakra, leaving only his original body remaining. What have you done? It's not what I did. Naruto said as he freed his left gloved hand and held it up towards him. It's what I'm going to do. Snap. Han felt a light stinging sensation in his C and saw that the kunai Naruto threw had penetrated through his protective demonic form and hit him, his armor and actually hitting him in his actual body. His eyes widened when he realized that Naruto used his flame alchemy to ignite the explosive tag he had placed on the kunai discreetly. No. I never got to test my. His words were see off in a fiery explosion that Naruto had managed to enhance with his alchemy. Naruto didn't spare the aerial fireball a second glance, choosing instead to cradle Akiza tightly against his body as he righted himself in the air and sparked up his cloud under his feet. As he found it difficult to slow the descent, he saw buildings once they passed through the clouds in the sky and he kicked himself. No, I'm so sorry Akiza-chan. He continued to try and divert their high momentum from their sheer fall, but all he could do was manage to lessen their impact with the ground, keeping them both alive, for all the good it did them. As he lay with Akiza close to him, he could feel the footsteps of enemy ninja pattering towards them. Then he pulled himself against a wall and sat against it, holding her close and shielding her with his blade arm. Before he knew it, he found himself cornered by every enemy shinobi that had been there through the night raid on their village. Vengeful eyes all glared at him as they all had weapons drawn at the ready. He was certain that the reason they hadn't mobbed them and tried to kill them right then and there was because they wanted them alive so that they could suffer beforehand. Fools. The crowd dispersed and made a hole as Kitsuki walked through, followed by his daughter Kuretsuki, both of them glaring at Naruto and the unconscious Akiza. You're going to pay for this, you know. You're going to suffer. I know, Naruto said with his head down as he returned his auto-mail arm to normal, choosing instead to embrace Akiza tightly than fight. He didn't say anything else as his eyes were shadowed with his head. Kitsuki shook his head at how unafraid he seemed at it all. Didn't he get it? He was going to beat endlessly. To the point where he'd beg for death, and it would only come when they said so. Akiza would in front of him, and he would be an example to the rest of the world to never cross a Wagako, so you know what we're going to do with you. Naruto shook his head. No. I wasn't talking about you all making me suffer. I was going to do it to myself. Saying that out loud got looks of confusion from all of the ninja around them until he felt Akiza stir in his arms. Akiza-chan. Kitsuki pointed to a random shinobi. Get us cuffs that will keep his chakra suppressed. I need volunteers to move him and her to secure cells for their punishment. He smirked when, as he expected, there was no shortage of volunteers. Meanwhile, Akiza eventually opened her green eyes and noticed their predicament rather quickly before speaking weakly. So it's over? She asked rhetorically. Did you beat Han? Naruto nodded and she smiled faintly. Oh well, thank you for trying, Fullmetal. I'm sorry you felt you had to do this for me. You say that like it was your choice for me to come here. I did this myself, Naruto said to her, smiling softly despite his unhealing injuries, and it's not over yet. He said, frowning immediately after saying such. Would you love me even if I was a monster? He asked earnestly. It's the only thing I can do now to get us out of here. My failsafe. Akiza nodded. I would love you no matter what you did, Fullmetal. You know you're the only person that I truly care for, and whatever you would do, you just said you would be doing it for me. Naruto looked into her eyes for a few moments until he heard the calls on the shinobi surrounding them that were ready to pull them apart and separate them again, something he had fought so hard to remedy. I want you to hold on to me tight. Don't you let go for one moment until I say it's okay. No matter how much it hurts, do you understand? Akiza nodded and whimpered in pain as she did just as he instructed of her. Naruto then spoke out loud to everyone surrounding him. You all only have one chance to let us leave. If you don't, then I will kill every last one of you right now, and there won't be anything you can do about it. Kuretsuki laughed mockingly. Look at you, you look like death. What could you possibly do to anyone like that? Naruto didn't respond to her question, he simply clapped his hands, putting everyone on edge. Naruto just stared at them with cold, lifeless blue eyes. Last chance. You won't lay a single hand on her ever again, and I'll destroy all of you. Every single person in a Wagako. You're bluffing. A random shinobi shouted, getting cheers of agreement from all of the others. Kitsuki heard every word and looked down at the harmless-looking young man. Then I guess I'll just kill you now if you still have it in you to make threats like that. Naruto heard the cheers from the people at the prospect of his death and he looked at Akiza, her eyes shut tightly as she held on to him weakly for all that she was worth. Naruto looked up and began his final explanation. Let me tell all of you one thing about alchemy before you do what you want. Maybe you'll be able to do something with it once I'm That got everyone's attention, as they were curious and fearful of the power that had held through their city all night long. Seeing them all come to a stop, he began to explain, circles are the foundation of the art. It keeps the power of the transmutation contained and allows one to manipulate it as to what they want out of it. Without a circle there isn't any alchemy, which is why me and Big Boss created shortcuts to help us use alchemy in fights without having to stop and draw circles all over the place. We also use runes and other figures such as more circles in the original main circle to focus the intent of our transmutations, but I never needed a circle. It's like my body itself is a circle. So, Kuretsuki asked. She really just wanted to kill him after all the havoc that had befallen her home over the last few hours, but alchemy was too powerful to ignore and she knew it. I'm a circle, Naruto repeated cryptically before he began to explain. My body itself is a point to focus a transmutation to. So I could make an unfinished circle and use it as long as I was somewhere inside of it, anywhere inside of it. And I'm inside of one right now. Kitsuki had been looking at him since he started crawling against the wall. There wasn't any circle around him. What circle, you brat? Naruto answered immediately. The circle I drew around your entire village the week before I attacked to get Akiza-chan, you idiot. Liar. Kuretsuki accused him. Take another step and find out. He said to her in response. Both father and daughter did, and Naruto let his hands drop to the ground, palms first. Goodbye, Awagaku. You all did this to yourselves. He said as a flash of light ran along the ground in a massive pattern that began to encompass an ornate trail through the entire village. What did you do? Kitsuki yelled at him as on the ground it took the appearance of one massive purple eye opening wide as he felt his life is draining away. Around him his comrades and everyone else in general were dropping like flies. What's happening? That's what's happening. It's Big F transmutation, Naruto said as he focused on holding on to Akiza and shutting his eyes tightly. Whatever happened from here on out, at least he had her with him, mission accomplished. XXX. Joshiro had hooked up with his teammates and Zabuza as they all headed towards the rendezvous point when his philosopher's stone fell from his necklace. He stopped abruptly and looked along the ground for it. He shouted, alerting his team to his plight. Eiko was the first to turn and see him looking on the ground for his stone, which she found and picked up, staring at it as she walked it back over to Joshiro. This is the philosopher's stone you made when we attacked that Otogaku base, isn't it? Joshiro took it from her and nodded. Yeah. You were just holding the physical manifestation of over 50 souls, Eiko. You don't want to touch something like this. The more people that fall prey to Big F transmutation, well, this is what you get out of it. She blinked as he put the stone back into his vest. It's job done, 50 souls, and we made that circle around Iwa. What would that have done? Joshiro shook his head as he walked past her. Iwa would have well over 60,000 people in it, not counting all of the animals and other living things there. I don't know what that would do. I don't want to know what that would do. He sighed out loud and rubbed his brow. Let's keep going. We're still not safe yet. The sun being up will just make it harder for us to stay on the move. With that, the ragtag grout set out once more. XXX. Hours later, Awagaku no Sato. The feeling of the hot midday sun beating down on his face finally woke Naruto up with a start. He patted himself down to find that he was as alright as he could figure he'd be after everything that happened. As a matter of fact, he felt great. Other than a few sore spots, it was almost as if he hadn't just been fighting a battle all night not a few hours ago. Looking around, he saw the lifeless bee of countless people in the streets around him, all dropped on the ground in a heap where they fell. It worked, he muttered darkly as he continued to look around when he finally turned his attention to the tight grip still latched around him. He looked down and saw Akiza still clutching him for dear life, putting a small smile on his face at seeing that at least he hadn't screwed up. She was still alive. The fact that they were still outside told him that the transmutation he had caused had gone through and had taken the life of everyone in the village. Were you lying? He asked softly to Akiza as he stroked her hair. Were you lying when you said you'd love me even if I became a monster? Because there's no way I'm not one now. I have the bee of an entire hidden village on my hands. I meant it, he heard her mutter in his arms as she began to shift around slightly, cracking one eye open. Somehow she no longer seemed to be suffering from the physical effects of the torment of her captors. She seemed as good as new from the way she was smiling so sweetly at him. His angel that he turned himself into a devil for, and he would do it again. So is it over now? She asked him. Yeah, Naruto said, kissing her on the forehead, it's over. And as far as he was concerned it was. He could deal with whatever fallout he would have to live with due to what he had just done later. Right now he honestly couldn't have cared any less about it. They were clear of anyone trying to stop them from leaving, and she would be just fine. Naruto-kun. Naruto heard Kyuubi speak rather hesitantly in his head directly to him. He couldn't put his finger on it, but she sounded uneasy. What's the matter, Kyuubi-chan? Are you alright? He asked her worriedly. Yes, don't worry, I'm fine. I was just sleeping after what you did knocked us all out. Nothing's happened to me but. XXX. Naruto's mindscape. In a wide open field, Kyuubi stood looking around herself. It was the same easily manipulatable mindscape that Naruto had given her free rein to change at her own whim, but there was one specific difference. That difference was the multitude of souls flittering about without physical being. Most of them didn't seem to know what had happened yet, but it was only a matter of time before they realized where they were all trapped. And what did this all mean? But I think you're going to want to get Akiza in gear as fast as you can so she can take the Gogyu Fuan off of you. Because you really need to come back in here and see this. Kyuubi told him, still in abject awe at the sheer amount of souls inside of him. There, finally. For those of you in the know, you'd better have realized what just happened. For those of you that are not, you're all going to have to wait until next time to get the idea. BWAHAHAHAHAHAHAHA. Anyway, until next time folks, hope you enjoyed, hope you continue to enjoy. I'm not sure how many more chapters this will all take to finish, but be assured the end will be here sooner or later, more than likely sooner. And I've still got more up my sleeve. Now, I'm off. Flies away, sitting on the top of a double rainbow with voice trailing in the distance, double rainbow. It's so incredible. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.